Hi everyone and welcome back. We are joined today by the great Professor Jeffrey Sachs to discuss the possibility of war over Taiwan. So thank you again for coming back on the program.
Glenn, great to be with you as always. Thanks.
So, there is a great risk that this economic rivalry between the United States and China could escalate into war. And if a war would happen, then Taiwan seems like the most likely trigger. So I therefore first I want to ask, do you see a path for Taiwan to become another Ukraine? That is a proxy war that risks growing into a wider, direct war.
Absolutely. There are a lot of parallels with Ukraine. Ukraine became, in the American mind, contested territory in a contest with Russia. Who would control Ukraine? It's a strange question. The answer in the case of Ukraine should have been that Ukraine would be left neutral as its original constitution and as its government 15 years ago wanted. But for the U.S., neutrality was not good enough. So the U.S. Participated in a coup in 2014 that brought in a pro-NATO government. And there's been a contest that turned into, of course, a devastating war over the future of Ukraine. Taiwan, of course, has many completely different historical roots, but there is a kind of contest underway. And of course, as in the case of Ukraine, it also involves very active Taiwanese politics. Taiwan is a place of complexity in Chinese history, and without the long panorama, it was part of the Qing dynasty until Japan took Taiwan as a colony in 1895 after winning the Sino-Japanese War. And Japan ruled Taiwan as a colony from 1895 to 1945. At that time, when Japan was defeated in World War II, Taiwan returned to China, to what was then the Republic of China, under the rule of Chiang Kai-shek. But a civil war broke out in China soon after that between the communist-led side under Mao Zedong and the nationalist government of the Republic of China under Chiang Kai-shek. And in 1949, the communists won, declared the People's Republic of China with the capital in Beijing, and Chiang Kai-shek evacuated, defeated and evacuated to the island of Taiwan and declared the rule of the Republic of China with the capital in Taipei. And that's the roots of today's complexity. There were, in 1949, two competitors. One had won the mainland, the other had evacuated to the island. Both declared one China. The mainland government declared the People's Republic of China as the ruler of all of China, that is mainland Taiwan and other islands, whereas Taiwan declared the Republic of China, the ruler of one China, mainland and islands. But of course, the Republic of China only controlled Taiwan and surrounding islands, whereas the mainland controlled, or the People's Republic of China was the mainland and the vast territory and population of China. But there was on both sides of the Taiwan Straits the idea of one China, just contesting who would rule China. Well, again, the complexities are enormous, but the United States was the ally of the Republic of China in World War II and was fervently anti-communist after World War II. And so when the Civil War ended, the United States continued to recognize the Republic of China on the island of Taiwan and did not recognize the People's Republic of China. Of course, the vast, vast, vast majority of China was in the mainland, and therefore it was governed by the People's Republic of China. The United Nations recognized that fact against U.S. opposition in 1971. And so the seat at the UN for China and in the Security Council that had been held by Taiwan, that is the Republic of China, up until 1971, from the founding of the UN, shifted to the People's Republic of China. Now, Taiwan was no longer represented in the UN, and the mainland, the People's Republic of China, said that diplomatic relations with the PRC of any other country, by any other country, meant that that country would subscribe to the one China policy, that there was only one Chinese government, that it represented all of China, and that that government was the People's Republic of China with the capital in Beijing. So all over the world, almost all countries with what was then some dozens, but now very, very few, recognized the People's Republic of China. The United States shifted its recognition in that way in 1979, ending its recognition of the Republic of China at Taiwan and diplomatically recognizing the People's Republic of China. And that also initiated an era of close economic relations between what was then a quite poor mainland and the United States. And the mainland became the producer of a lot of basic industrial goods and inputs and assembly operations for the U.S. economy. And on that basis, the People's Republic of China experienced remarkable economic growth. One could say, justifiably, I think, the greatest economic reform period in world history, perhaps from 1980 to now, becoming a extremely sophisticated, modern, technologically cutting-edge economy that in absolute size, according to purchasing power parity, is bigger than the U.S. economy now. Well, all of this meant that for some decades, Taiwan was on the margins, but when the U.S. shifted its diplomatic recognition, it also passed U.S. legislation saying that it would continue to support Taiwan's status in rejecting any forcible reunification of the island with the mainland. Whereas the mainland said, of course, Taiwan is part of one China. And actually, Taiwan said, yes, Taiwan is part of one China under the Republic of China Constitution, which still prevails. The idea of Taiwan and the United States was that Taiwan would have a path of autonomy, let's say, de facto independent, not in a political sovereign sense, but in a daily behavioral sense of politics and economics and governance, and that the United States would protect Taiwan against any forcible reunification attempted by the mainland. That's more or less a description of the status quo now. But things have gotten much more complicated, if I may say. And the reason is that both Taiwan and the mainland became extraordinarily successful economically. And that has led to massive political and geopolitical changes as well. In the case of Taiwan, this great boom started actually before the mainland's boom. So Taiwan's boom started in the 1960s, and Taiwan became one of the Asian tiger economies. It grew very rapidly, and then starting in the 1990s, it actually became home to the most advanced semiconductor chip fabrication in the world with TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. And this company produces about 90% or more of the most advanced chips in the whole world. So Taiwan achieved a spectacular economic success. And in that context, Chiang Kai-shek, the original ruler, died in 1975. Soon after, his son became the second ruler of what was then an authoritarian government. But starting in the 1980s, it began to liberalize and to democratize. And in the 1990s, went to an electoral democratic system. And in 1996, elected its first freely elected democratic president. So the political path of Taiwan became a democracy. At the same time, starting roughly 15 years after Taiwan's takeoff, maybe 20, but roughly 15 years, China began its rapid ascent. And China experienced this incredible economic growth for 40 years, roughly 10% per year. And in the case of China, that provoked a geopolitical reaction from the United States. The geopolitical reaction was that the U.S. political class came to view China first as a concern, then as a threat, and now, though the term isn't maybe always used, de facto as an enemy. This is, in my opinion, a terrible misconception. It's a kind of paranoia or an attempt by the United States to maintain a hegemony that it doesn't have. I believe the U.S. has delusions of power. I'm talking about the U.S. political class. They don't understand we're in a multipolar world. They want to be in a U.S. only led world. China is an affront to that. So starting roughly a decade ago, the U.S. turned to quite hostile policies vis-a-vis China. And you mentioned the trade war as one of those instruments, but it goes well beyond the trade war. It goes to military buildup in East Asia, in the Philippines, in Korea, in Japan, in other U.S. military bases. It goes to diplomacy, creating anti-China instruments like the Quad or AUKUS. It goes to technology export bans and overt attempts to contain China's growth. And this has been going on for a decade. So finally, put Taiwan back into this story. From inside Taiwan, there is a long-term trend towards wanting independence, a democratic system, a new generation of young people without the emotional or experiential ties to the mainland, unlike their parents and grandparents. And so there's a growing movement towards independence. On the mainland side, there's a growing movement with political and military and financial power to saying, no way, we are now reunifying. Believe it, because China is so strong. And on the United States side, there is, on the one part, angst about China's strength. There is a pretty broad-based attempt to weaken China in any way, and for mischievous, I think dangerous American politicians, they see Taiwan as something to play with in a way against China, in the same way that many in the U.S. saw Ukraine as something to provoke Russia. The U.S. support for Ukraine's NATO membership was mostly about the U.S. and to weaken Russia, not about Ukraine itself, which ended up losing badly in this proxy war between the U.S. and Russia. So Taiwan is now part of a contest between China and the United States. And China says, don't you dare intervene in our internal policy. There is one China. We have said it from the beginning. Footnote, so has the Republic of China in Taipei said it from 1949. There is one China. Don't you, the United States, come into the middle of this. The U.S., by contrast, says, we're there from the beginning. And we have the right and the duty and the determination to protect Taiwan against any kind of military incursion or forced reunification from the mainland. Don't you dare think about using force. And while we have technically a strategic ambiguity as to whether we would militarily